the trap of falling into a state of mind where they see the eradication of Islamophobia as a purely Muslim obligation. This is a societal problem. Muslims have their role to play. The non-Muslim community has its role to play as well. And what we have to try and bring society into is a recognition of the importance of this partnership between Muslims and non-Muslims, not for the purpose of converting them to Islam. No. If they don't believe in Islam, that is perfectly fine. And by the way, this is not some modern, postmodern, ultra-liberal stance that I'm assuming because I'm having an interview with you. Yes. This is the tradition of Islam. We don't have holocausts in the Muslim world. We don't have inquisitions such as what you had in Spain, where we simply drive everybody out. We don't have that. We are able to live in a pluralistic society. Christians lived in Muslim lands. Jews lived in Muslim lands. Zoroastrian lived in Muslim lands. We're very comfortable with that. And so what we're looking for is the ability to establish the fact that we as a Muslim community are able to live in a pluralistic society that is not something that is alien to us, that is in fact consistent with the very tradition of Islam itself. And in that spirit, we have to convince others of the value of a partnership that will enable them to look upon us as partners in society and enable us to look at them as partners in society for the purpose of supporting a public space that will allow for a dignified existence for everybody.
Inshallah. I surely agree with what you said, and that we do have a big role to play as Muslim community to spread our Islamic values and teachings. But my last question, Dr. Jackson, would be, do you believe in the importance of having Islamophobia recognized, especially in the non-Muslim community, since whether we like it or no, it's very sad, but it's true, we are facing a lot. It's a very dangerous phenomenon, and it's growing in North America, in Canada, in Quebec, in the French or English Canada. So all what's happening, for so many people, it doesn't necessarily have a name. But is it important to point at things and to say, well, this is Islamophobia, what's happening to the Muslim community?
That's a good question, and I think that the answer to that would depend on the use to which a label would be put. I think that, for example, if you were to go back to the 1920s or the 1930s in the United States of America and what was happening to the Jewish community, many would probably have said that, you know, it would be a good idea if we could come up with a name for what's happening to these people so that we could identify it when it occurs and therefore be in a position to address it. Yes. Well, in and of itself, that was probably a good idea, but we can see the way in which, by having that label, sometimes it can be used in an over-inclusive way. And so everything becomes anti-Semitism. And I think that that's a danger that we have to confront anytime we start dealing with labels. I think, though, that whether we come up with a label or not, the important thing for us is to convince society at large that Islamophobia is not simply something that hurts Muslims. It may hurt Muslims in the short run, but what society has to understand is that you are humiliating, you are devaluing, you are denigrating human beings. And that denigration, that humiliation, that dehumanization may be pushed down into their being for a while.
Right.
There's bound to come a time when that explodes. That is not in the interest of anyone. And so what we must understand is that Islamophobia is not simply a Muslim problem. It is a societal problem. And if we solve that problem, then we benefit as a society. If we don't solve that problem, then we end up with, you know, there are lots of people. There was an incident in the United States, a little while ago, where a number of young men were arrested in Pakistan under suspicion of going there to join Al-Qaeda or something like that. And the way that this was played out in the news media was that everybody was talking about the radicalization of Muslim youth in America, the radicalization of Muslim youth. Well, I'm sure that there are instances where some Muslim youth become radicalized. This is a phenomenon that will take place from time to time. But I think what was missing in that analysis is that far more often than radicalization, what we're dealing with in many Muslim youth is alienation. And Islamophobia alienates Muslims from the society in which they live. And that kind of alienation is not in the interest of that society.
And it doesn't help integration.
It doesn't help integration. And ultimately, where you have alienated human beings in any society, that cannot be in the interest of that society. And the powers that be have to produce leadership that understands that, has the courage, the wisdom, and the vision to address it in the interest of society at large. Because when those human beings reach that state where their alienation and their denigration and their humiliation, their dehumanization reaches the point where they themselves have no virtue left, then we are left as a society to deal with those kinds of individuals. And that we don't want to do.
Yes. Well, inshallah, we are very optimistic. Inshallah, it will all come to an end. Jazakallah khair, Sheikh Jackson. Thank you very much for your precious advices. Barakallah.
Shukran.
Thank you.
Assalamu alaikum.